Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an entrepreneur who's currently in Barcelona, Spain, Andrew Funk. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invitation.
Andrew is the founding president of Homeless Entrepreneur. He's a social impact activist for homeless people. So, Andrew, before we get into what you're doing, one of your quotes intrigued me, which is a smart city without homeless people is a smarter city. While I understand what it means, I'd like to understand the implications. And if you have an example, give me one.
Well, I mean, basically, if you have homeless people in the street, it's a mirror image of the results based on the systems that we're using. So I have a hard time calling it a smart city when you see human waste, if you will, in the city. So we believe that a city that does not have homeless people living in it is smarter because it has found a way to include them in society. So you have examples of governments like Finland that are doing a great job. They have not ended homelessness, but they're very close to reducing it in a way that people aren't sleeping on the streets. So you have different types of homelessness. So it's not as simple as just someone in the street. A woman that's in an abusive relationship is considered homeless. People that live with too many people in the same space are homeless. So depending on where you go, homelessness in Barcelona, San Francisco, Brazil, and India have different types. Absolutely. But we think that every smart city can be smarter if they improve the results. And part of that is the well-being of the citizens. Right. So if you have people in the street or that are homeless, it means that there's something that's not connecting. It's important to mention that it's bi-directional. It's not just the city, but also the citizens. So a smarter city includes the citizens in the process as well.
Very interesting. So now let's come to your organization, Homeless Entrepreneur. Tell me about what you do and what motivated you to start this.
I'll start with the motivation. The motivation was basically, I found myself in a homeless situation. We had raised 300,000 euros to set up a company to connect entrepreneurs and investors. And my first son was about to be born. Everything was going well. So you're living the dream. And then the money got mismanaged by partners. And it was spent on all the employees in 6 months. And I saw almost nothing of that because my objective was to make sure the employees got paid first. And then that caused problems at home. And I ended up in a homeless situation. So I had to solve my own problem. As I solved my own problem, I was also inspired to see how I could help other people at the same time. And since then, I've been building a model that contemplates how we can help homelessness around the world, reducing poverty through economic empowerment. And so I was inspired through my own situation and then figuring out how we can expand and help more people. So that's how the organization started. Okay. And the other question was what we do exactly, right?
Correct.
A simple thing is we speak with great people like yourself who invite us to communicate on their podcast. We're building right now, we're setting up an INGO in Nigeria. We're closing a deal with an organization called Revive Alaska Outreach to help homeless people in Alaska. We've helped 25 people become active working citizens again. And we've helped more than 295 people improve their life. So what we do in our day-to-day is varied because really we have 4 main programs. We have a homeless helpline. People from all over the world contact us in English or Spanish. We help connect them to resources locally. Then we have an audiovisual program, which is called Homeless Voices. So we empower homeless people by giving them their own voice and the framework so they can tell their own stories. So up to 16 videos, we help them there. And actually 50% of the people that participate in that end up connecting to resources that help them improve their lives. Then we have the HELP program. The HELP program is a 1-year holistic program that basically gets rid of all the barriers and excuses so they can become the best version of themselves. And then we have a launchpad housing program that gives people the opportunity to trampoline back into society. And we've innovated with these last programs of the helpline, Homeless Voices, and the Launchpad housing as a result of COVID, because obviously now there's more homeless problems than ever because of the situation.
I must compliment you. This is the first time I've heard such a clearly enunciated plan for homeless people. Fantastic. So, a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about different kinds of homelessness.
Yes.
How serious is the problem of homelessness in Europe or in the world? And what kinds of homelessness are there?
I will break it down to two simple types, which is absolute, which is when people are living in misery and poverty. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about people that, earn $1 a day. And then you have relative poverty when you have like millionaires and some guys making $300,000 a year instead of $1 million. He's relatively poor in his community, okay, but he's not poor. So you have different types of homelessness. When people think of homelessness, they're normally thinking about rough sleepers, so people sleeping in the street. Mm-hmm. And they also think about mental health issues and drug problems. This is actually enunciated more than it's overrepresented in that sense, because the main reason people become homeless is because they lost their job, they don't have enough income, or a break in family ties. This represents about 75 or 76%, roughly around that 70%. And so, but it's easier for organizations to raise funds if you go on the more exaggerated side. So many times the image is of people with drug problems and mental health issues, the first thing that comes to mind. But as I said previously, a woman that's going through domestic violence is homeless as well. But it's harder to tell the story. So what we try to do, first of all, is we focus on three main pillars. The first one is knowledge, then recognition, and then change. So as we build the knowledge of society to understand what homelessness is, then they realize that they're not that far away, and it's possible they're even experiencing homelessness. Because if they're 40 years old living at home because they can't pay rent, they're technically homeless, but they have the structure, the family support that gives them the opportunity to have a roof over their head. And that's an important aspect to really understand what homelessness is. And then recognizing is, once you recognize the knowledge that exists, you can see how you can match what you do to participate in the process, which then leads to positive social change. So you've identified, you recognized, or you learned about our organization, you have knowledge, you recognize that you could learn and add value to your community by inviting us to participate in your podcast. And then the change comes by actually recording the podcast and sharing it. And if both sides participate, you create a larger impact. So it's always about bidirectional participation. So you create it, you share it, we participate, we share it, and then we reach a larger community and we build the knowledge base, and more people have a better opportunity to recognize how they can participate in the positive social change.
Amazing. My next question to you is that, you said you're using technology, most specifically blockchain.
Blockchain, yes. IBM Cloud.
Absolutely. Tell me, how are you using blockchain technology, which is really a serialized ledger, to end homelessness?
It's really simple. When you deal with larger projects, organizations want to have greater transparency. So when you're dealing with a smaller level, we use social media. So that way, when people donate, we have a specific donor box, for example, so people can see how much has been raised, how many people have donated, and then we share the progress of the people that are receiving support. So you have that transparency. But when you look at larger projects and larger organizations, we use IBM Cloud. So that way we can trace everything that's happening. So when people donate, they know exactly where the money's going and the operations behind it. So we thought it was an amazing opportunity to become more transparent, to also improve our operations, because it forces you to have clearer operations. And in that aspect, it improves our organization as well. So it increases the trust and confidence of our stakeholders by bringing them into the process of ending homelessness. So it's all about really synchronizing the processes and protocol and what we're doing, so that way everything is seamless. And as you do that, then we become part of the organizations, and blockchain connects us with organizations, because then they also see what we're doing. And when you see it, it's easier to understand it. So for us, it's like the glue, if you will, or the oil, depending on how you want to look at it, that brings us together with the corporate world and large organizations, so they understand the processes of what we're doing. And transparency is important. So we're always trying to think about how we can use technology to do that, and technology scales it, makes it easier to understand. I mean, technology allows us to have this conversation right now.
Fantastic. So moving on, you mentioned that you have, with training, managed to bring people out of poverty and into mainline work. What are the areas that you impart training in?
It really depends on the individual. It could be anywhere from the IT sector, it could be construction, it could be a painter, it could be someone who's writing a book. What we do is we focus on the best attributes of the individual. Mm-hmm. And instead of what normally takes place, which is government subsidizes people's weaknesses. So if they have a disability, 35%, they get paid. And the greater their disability, the more subsidy, the larger the subsidy is. What we do is we focus on, instead of the 35% of the disability, we focus on the 65% that they do well. Mm-hmm. And we reward them for focusing on what they do well, as we also try to reinforce their weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So I think the main thing is understanding what people have done in the past. Do they need to change? There is a Peruvian woman that came to a master's. She became homeless because of COVID. And then we changed the sector. So we focused, instead of the touristic sector, which has been hit very hard, mm-hmm. we decided to focus on sustainability and also e-commerce. So she was able to pivot, and now she's extremely happy. Her name's Maria Cruz. She's working in a company full-time, traveling. She's much happier because she was able to pivot. So we have to know if that person can continue growing with what they did previously, which many times is the case for people working on renovating houses. Mm-hmm. The other aspect is if they can pivot and how we can do that. We actually created an HE score, homeless mm-hmm. entrepreneur score, to understand the probability of people becoming active working citizens again. Mm-hmm. And we use that in the selection phase, so that way we can understand who we can help with the resources we have.
Incredible. And once a person has been retrained, how does society or employers accept the individual? Because mm-hmm. they would know that this individual was a homeless entrepreneur, and now he or she is beginning to look for a job again. So is there any kind of a taboo attached to homelessness?
There's obviously a taboo attached to homelessness, but what we're doing is we're changing the image of homelessness by saying there are two types of homelessness. Mm. There's the type of people that are willing and able to participate, that need the tools, resources, and network, and that want to participate. And then there's another type. And in that selection process, it just means that some people aren't at the right moment. Mm. So we focus on those that are. So we do a quality check, if you will, and we provide consistent support to the people when they enter the company. So when they hire a homeless entrepreneur, they're also really inviting homeless entrepreneur to join their community. So we increase their communication. They come out in the press, television. They have the constant support with the person we're working with. So there's so much added value that's bundled into hiring a homeless person in our program, because they're not homeless. They're not a homeless person. They're a person experiencing homelessness in the homeless entrepreneur program, so that way they could be an everyday citizen. So think of it like a quality badge of someone that's gone through a very intense process so they can be in society again. So just being part of the program is a filter to make sure that the people that get hired are willing and able to participate. And the people that have hired our homeless entrepreneurs are very happy with the experience.
Really? So, you gave me the example of a Korean woman who pivoted and is now in e-commerce. Share with me some other examples of the way you've helped some other people.
Yeah, there are so many different examples. I mean, one example was a guy who was a telecom technician. His name's Guillaume, and he came to the Mobile World Congress with us, because before the COVID pandemic, we were sleeping out 1 to 5 nights for 3.5 years every month. So we were at the Mobile World Congress, and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a telecom technician." I said, "Well, why don't we create a sign that says I'm a homeless telecom technician? Will you hire me?" And I thought the Mobile World Congress was an appropriate place. The local press picked that up, then Euronews picked it up. he ended up getting a job interview. He got the job. He worked part-time, and then now he's working full-time, and he just got a motorcycle. So one of his dreams was getting a motorcycle, so that way it's part of being part of society again, right? And oh, sorry, my phone fell. And as a result, he's an everyday citizen doing what he does and also helping other people as well. So that's an example of another person. Another person was a graphic designer. And so he had a son when he was going through that experience. And after going through our program, he was able to get work, and he's a happy father, and he's doing what he likes to do as a graphic designer. He's also a rapper, so he does that in his spare time as well. So those are just two examples, but really it's on a case-to-case basis. As we have more people, obviously we have more connections with specific industries and sectors because we're working more with them. But it's an experience in which we grow with our community, and the more interaction we have with companies and governments, the easier it is to work with them.
Amazing. And tell me, how do you raise your funds? I mean, you're doing such amazing work. Who funds you?
We have, it's public and private. We focus on PPPs, which are public-private participation or partnerships. And for example, we have a local government called Premier Mar, and we helped one of the people in their community. And now we're looking at the next person we can help. So they fund a specific program to help one person in Spain or in Europe. It's 3,080 euros for 1 year, which is approximately 250 euros a month, to make sure they have all the support they need. And so you have a professional development manager, health, training, housing, legal, finance, communication, sales, and a mentor. So you have a lot of support there. Also, for example, IBM sponsored as well. So we have corporate, we have medium-sized companies, we have individuals, and we're focusing on our sustainability as well. So we're developing products and services. For example, there's a book called Mobility Moves Minds, in which is published, and 20% of that book is used, the profits is used to help homeless entrepreneurs. So it's about understanding how we can add value to government so they have more tax-paying citizens, right? And with corporations so they can have more effective CSR programs. So that's how we fund it, by adding value to the public-private sectors. And then as an exchange, they donate and support what we're doing.
Fabulous. And do a lot of the people who you support to come out of homelessness, do they come back and volunteer with you again?
Yeah, they obviously, it's not an obligation. They have the opportunity. And for the most part, when people go through that process, they appreciate that and they want to give back to the community. So the second stage, they actually play the big brother role, and they transmit what they learn to people that are in the program, in the help program. And then the third stage is when they just become active members. So we have people, for example, Beto, who is from Brazil. He's always sending us people that need help or can participate in the program. So you have a larger community thinking about how they can help other people. And obviously when they go through it, think of it as an extended family.
Wonderful. I have time for two more questions.
Okay.
My next question is, when you were building Homeless Entrepreneur, what have been some of your challenges and some of your learnings?
The biggest challenge was just not being accepted by the social sector, because sometimes I say the social sector is quite antisocial because they already have their system in place. So when the majority is focused on assistance-based models, when we want to provide an empowerment-based model, there's huge rejection because people don't want to change the revenue streams that they currently have. And there's a cost to innovation, not thinking about the benefits. So that was probably the hardest thing, just realizing that the most common sense partners were the last place we should go, and just understanding what homelessness is, how we can help people, but going through that process of really understanding and building our model and the programs that we have. And the biggest learning was understanding our limits, what we can and can't do. And also the challenge of people not thinking that homeless people should contribute to their own change. This is something that is controversial because people in our housing program, the launching housing program, when people have income, they have to contribute 30%. So that way they can help other people that don't have income join the housing program as well. It's a way of giving back, and it actually matches the percent for official protection housing in Spain. So we're just using the national percentage there. But a lot of people don't think homeless people should contribute. And I think that's a huge mistake, because then you're not valuing them as people. Everyone needs to contribute within their means. And we help them so that way they can contribute completely. So if you look at the way that we see it is, when a company donates, they're not donating a product with complete loss. What we're working on is how can we turn that donation into a different mentality, which is, I'm not giving this to you for free, but I'm buying into future customers. Why? Because that person becomes an evangelist in the 6 to 12 months he's using the product, and then they can buy it at a discounted price, and then they can use the product or service as anyone else. So they're helping regenerate the community, so that way their services can be used as well. And they're leveraging the assets they have at the same time. So I think this is the best way to go about it. And the learning takes place every day. Every conversation we have, every time something doesn't work, every time something works, but we're constantly trying to figure out how to improve and learn at the same time.
Fascinating. And my last question to you, homeless people need to be provided with a lot of infrastructure by governments, because they're out on the roads and they're out on the sleeping at night and whatever else.
Yeah.
What is the role the various governments play in supporting you to tackle some of the homelessness?
I think the main role is understanding where they add the most value and how they can partner up correctly with the private sector. So private sector generates wealth and public sector manages it through taxes. So I think having a clearly defined way of how there's a more evenly balanced model in which assistance and empowerment exists. So I think that governments have the role of understanding how to improve their current model and programs, so that way we can end homelessness instead of making it more comfortable to live in a homeless situation.
Fabulous. Andrew, thank you so much. It's been such a privilege speaking to you. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the homeless. And thank you for taking me through this absolutely incredible journey that you are on to support the people who need it. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining and participating in the process.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.